foreign predatory parasitic corporations are replacing our natural environment with an industrial landscape of wind turbines. One Nation will stand against sending children down a path of drug dependency and body mutilation to appease the gender cult. Leave our kids alone. The Trusted Digital Identity Bill is a global surveillance and control mechanism that profit-hungry corporations and power-mad politicians drafted and crafted. One Nation opposes this inhuman, dystopian future that the United Nations promotes as the Great Reset, and we condemn this Parliament for signing on to it. I called for Australia to reject the World Economic Forum's Great Reset and instead mount a great resist. Just like the koalas being euthanised to make way for wind turbines or damaged solar panels leaking toxic heavy metals into waterways, the United Nations net zero plan again involves killing the environment to save it. I've been speaking about the fear, the oppression and the inhuman cruelty of our COVID response since July 2020. I promised to hound down those responsible, and I will continue relentlessly to keep that promise. You're about to be live with me, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Well, g'day. It's the time for the weekly wrap. And thank you very much for being awake, or for working to awaken to what's going on in our country, Australia. We are together on the front line of an information war, an indoctrination war. On each of the topics I raised today, what are your thoughts? What are your suggestions? What are your comments? Let's turn first of all to a video of our Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, Dr. Jim Chalmers, at a press conference.
Claire.
Treasurer, on the cost of living, it was almost 3 years ago exactly that Labor released its GovTech's modelling that showed that its collection of energy policies would reduce household power bills by on average 18% by 2025 or $275. Is it time to concede that that is not going to be the case? And before you talk about the subsidies, obviously that modelling did not account for subsidies.
Well, the modelling also didn't account for the war in Ukraine, and it was modelled in 2021 for an outcome in 2025, and it's 2024 now. And so you asked me about an outcome in 2025. It's 2024 now, and we have delivered a substantial decrease in electricity bills because we know that's one of the big drivers of pressures on household budgets. If you look at the most recent inflation figures, the electricity part of those inflation figures, those prices have gone down 35.6% to October.
So in 2 weeks' time, will you come back and answer that question in 2025 as to whether that 275 is actually achievable?
I'll give you the same answer, which is we've got those power prices down by 35.6% in the most recent inflation data.
He's lying. Think about what that man said in terms of trust, choice and accountability. He is lying. Without the Energy Relief Fund, prices would have been skyrocketing. As it is, businesses, shops, small businesses, factories are paying enormous amounts for electricity. And we used to have the world's cheapest electricity. We used to have the world's most reliable electricity and the most stable grid. Now we've got one that's falling into complete instability and chaos. Think about this. Yes, Glenn, we do have enough natural gas for Australians for a long, long time. Let's move on and think again as we talk about CSIRO's Gen Cost studies, which is fraud. Think about the words trust, choice and accountability. Here's what the CSIRO says about the cost of power. Note the bottom range of coal. It's actually cheaper than the bottom range of solar and wind. These are the fraudulent studies, despite the fraud that's being perpetrated by the CSIRO on these costs. So here's what happens to those estimates when you make just a few changes to line up with the reality. The life of the plant, for example, they've had a ridiculous 30-year life of plant, which means you're depreciating the plant life over half the life of the plant, the real life, which means you double your depreciation cost, which has a huge impact. The percent the power station is available, for example, 89% for a coal-fired power station is not good. Normally it's 95 to 98%, 100% plus then take away the scheduled maintenance. And look at this. This is the more realistic cost estimates that were made by Aidan Morrison using figures that are well and truly accepted. Notice nuclear comes down to being around the price of solar and wind. But coal, look at coal, it's far, far cheaper. And look at the high range of coal when you use realistic figures. And that's $104 a month per megawatt hour, rather. That's cheaper than the lowest cost of solar and wind. We know that. That's what's going on. That's why that's why electricity prices are rising in this country. We know, for example, that 53%, the upper range for the coal price, is an absurd availability capacity factor, and it should be more like 90 to 95%, which would bring the cost per megawatt hour for coal down to around about $50, which is where we know coal-fired power stations should be and were before they started fiddling. The other thing about this is that under the National Electricity Market rules and under legislation, the solar and wind get priority. So coal only gets to be a filler every now and then, which destroys the price. The spongy filling of the ISP's step change scenario includes around 15 gigawatts of ultra-flexible hydrogen electrolyzer loads designed to perfectly soak up oversupply of solar, a pipe dream that's quickly unravelling as industry players pull out. This is from the Financial Review. The wind and solar costs don't include hundreds of billions of dollars in batteries that the government wants you to pay for, and install in your home so that they can take over whenever they want. So listen to this. The plan calls for a staggering 157 gigawatt hours of home and electric vehicle batteries by 2050. That's more than 11 million new Tesla Powerwalls, with 90% of those batteries controlled by the grid operators. Not you. You pay for them at about $12,000 a pop. If you've got a lazy 12 grand hanging around, just invest it in a Tesla battery so that you can pull the government out of the mess it's made. 90% of those batteries are controlled by grid operators to manage surplus wind and solar. Unbelievable. And sometimes they're even talking about keeping batteries empty at the start of the day because solar and wind put in too much during the day and not enough at night. And I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. Under the government's plan, EV owners are increasingly expected to charge during the day and discharge in the evening. Exactly the opposite of what they want. Surprisingly, none of these consumer energy resources are included as a cost in the ISP. None. This is absolutely absurd. We have gone, from what I said, Cynthia says, those batteries blow up, I'm not getting one. Well, yeah, you might have to pay for a new house too when it burns down. But this is the absurdity that's happening to our electricity sector under the name of climate change. We'll talk more about that climate fraud in the future. Take away all these, Roy says, take away all the subsidies and these renewables are more expensive. Way more expensive. Every country which has a significant proportion of solar and wind has alarmingly high electricity prices. Look at Germany. Industry employers are crying out and saying that they're being driven out of business. One of the world's industrial powerhouses, Germany, is now being smashed by its own policies. And then we switch to Snowy 2. How recyclable is it? Wind turbines and solar panels. Well, Lancelot, wind and solar are called renewable because you have to renew the bastards every 15 or so years. You have to completely replace them, go through your whole capital cost again. They don't include that. So let's have a look at Snowy power lines. When I was working for another senator briefly in 2017, I said I developed some questions for Snowy 2. Snowy 2's water battery. It never made sense. Malcolm Turnbull came up with a harebrained scheme. He's now invested in similar schemes himself, but he came up with a harebrained scheme. No business plan, no cost-benefit analysis, and one of the first questions I put to them was, what are the costs of the extra transmission? Because the transmission lines coming out of Snowy at the moment are at capacity. When you add capacity, you're going to have to build new transmission lines. So now the government is approving the HumeLink transmission project connecting Snowy Hydro 2 to the grid. Wow, they're connecting it to the grid. That's going to cost them another $4.8 billion, $5 billion. So the cost of Snowy 2 has gone from $2 billion to $17 billion. $17 billion. We see solar and wind complexes, large industrial solar and wind complexes, not connected to the grid but still getting paid through the subsidies for the power they generate, but they can't connect to the grid. This is absolutely absurd. And now let's move to smart meters, because they're going to have to control your use of electricity, and that's what the real objective is. So let's go to smart meters. So energy retailers will be paying the same as some businesses, power price charges on households based on the highest point of use. So whatever your peak use is, that's the tariff you will be put on. So as it says here, hundreds of thousands of Australian households are being charged electricity prices based on their single biggest point of usage across an entire month. So if you have 1 day, 1 minute, 1 hour, half an hour of very high peak, that's the tariff you'll pay for the whole of the entire month. An investigation by the ABC, as much as you can trust the ABC, has found that soaring numbers of residential electricity customers with smart meters are being put out onto so-called cost-reflective tariffs such as time of use and flexible rates. This is all for the generators to make up for the money that they're losing because of the inefficiency of solar and wind. And then we've got demand tariffs, under which a customer's single highest point of demand for power from the grid measured in 30-minute blocks is used to calculate how much they pay for a whole month. So if you have a very high 30 minutes, you'll be paying that rate for the whole month. This is the rot that's going on. We used to have the world's cheapest electricity, the most reliable electricity, the most stable electricity. Now we've got a rickety grid that's collapsing in New South Wales, just as we forecast, and collapsing in Victoria, where they have huge reserves in both states of brown coal in Victoria, black coal in New South Wales, and they're being decimated. They're exporting coal from the port of Newcastle, one of the largest exporters in the world, to China, to Asia, to other countries, and they can't use it there. This is insane. So on each of these topics I raised today, what are your thoughts? I'm just going to rattle. I want to get to question and answer because we've missed out lately, and I love question and answer. So think about these words: trust. Only one nation has a positive trust rating. In a survey that was done, a Roy Morgan survey was done, reported in the Courier Mail. Albanese, Dutton, Bant and Larissa Waters have atrocious trust measurements. Greens, Labor, Liberal, all negative trust. Only one nation has a positive trust rating amongst the 4 top parties. Think about choice. When the government raises electricity prices or forces electricity generators and transmitters to raise electricity prices, you have less choice with what you do with your money because you have less money. And that cascades right through the economy: groceries, insurance, housing, everything. And then think about this. Trust and choice together lead to another word: accountability. Ford produces a better product, sales go to Ford. For example, the Toyota Hilux dominated sales. Now the Ford Ranger has come out; it's better than Toyota Hilux in the latest model, and so Ranger has become #1 selling vehicle in the country. That's the beauty of free choice and allowing people to make their mind up as to what they use. That's what we need right throughout our sector. I want to give you a few updates on news recently. We had a COVID under trial inquiry in the 4th of December, which was the first Wednesday in December, and there we had politicians from 5 different countries talking about what's happening in their countries with regard to COVID. It was COVID under trial. We also had leading doctors from around the world. We also had leading statisticians from around the world, and the picture is horrific. We're posting them up gradually. We've posted the first 2 days, the first 2, 1 on each day, and we're going through Christmas, New Year with the remaining. There are 12 in total. And I want to thank the witnesses from all over the world: Senator Ron Johnson, Senator Ron Johnson from America, Tanya Unkovic from the New Zealand First Party, a member of the coalition government in New Zealand. We also had Christine Anderson, a German member of the European Parliament. We also had Angus Dalgleish give us an update on politics in Britain, and we had politicians in this country. We had doctors, as I said, lawyers, all looking at COVID under trial, because that's what we're seeing now: COVID under trial, the COVID response. I want to thank the MPs. We invited 9 MPs, I think, from memory. 4 were able to make it. 8 of them said they could make it, but 4 of them didn't come. So that left 4 of us. There was myself, and of course the ever-present Pauline Hanson, wonderful. We also had Russell Broadbent from Victoria and the seat of Monash, wonderful man, given a lot of service. He left the Liberal Party. He's now an independent. Worth getting behind if you're in Monash, well worth getting behind. A very strong, courageous man. And Senator Alex Antic from the Liberal Party. And as I said earlier, we invited 9 across parties multi-party, so it could be truly representative of the parliamentarians. One of the things that came up was the compensation. I've mentioned it before, and we'll talk about it forever until we get it. Compensation for the people who are not only those who are injection injured, not only the bereaved of those who've died as a result of the COVID injections. Thank you, Cynthia. We've had many, many comments because it was live streamed during that whole day, Wednesday the 4th. Yeah, it was wonderful. We had many, many very positive comments. Compensation for the people who lost their jobs, lost their houses, lost their families when they wouldn't comply with the COVID injection mandates, inhuman treatment. People who lost their businesses, lost their welfare during their livelihoods during COVID restrictions that were all unnecessary and did enormous damage. The David Declaration, sorry, I want to stick on compensation for a minute. The compensation is for not just the COVID injection injured and dead, but for people who were smashed by the COVID restrictions, the COVID mismanagement, the COVID fraud. When the government, and we think the government should pay initially, I'll come to that more in a minute, the government should pay because the CSIRO was involved in gain-of-function research in the Wuhan city of China, and they admitted to that. They boasted about it, and they developed, in Wuhan Institute of Virology and in the University of North Carolina, illegally developed the spike protein, which was the pathogenic part of COVID. So the government should be paying compensation. But when the government pays, it's you and I as taxpayers who are paying. So we think the government should be getting their money back from Pfizer. The Labor Party, the Liberal Party, neither will release the contracts to us for Pfizer, neither. And so, but we understand from contracts that we've seen with other countries that if there's fraud involved, and there certainly was fraud involved with Pfizer, Moderna, they lied repeatedly. If there's fraud involved, we can get our money back. That's $18 billion. Thank you very much. We'll have it back. And we should be putting the bill to for the compensation to Australians injured or killed by the COVID response to the big pharma companies that concocted it all. I want to congratulate. So the David Declaration that I mentioned, I will post that. It's self-explanatory. It's 100 doctors, lawyers from around the world who are making a declaration, and it's all common sense. It's what One Nation has been saying since about 3 months after the virus arrived in this country, and gradually saying more and more. So we'll be working towards a compensation, which is included in the David Declaration, International Declaration, and I will post that so you can look at it for yourself. I want to congratulate Dr. William Bay. You know, I said very early on, the path to accountability involves 3 parts. The people, that's not just marching, but the people holding politicians accountable. Court action, which is going on. Dr. Melissa McCann has got a class action lawsuit going in Sydney Federal Court, and parliamentarians, and there are a few of us. We've gone from just 2 or 3 initially opposing the government's response and calling out the government, state and federal, to now we've got about 11 people on our side, and we've got some crossbenchers now starting to wake up. We've got sometimes the Liberal Party waking up. So we're building the numbers in the Senate. As the truth is getting more and more known and spread around the world and around Australia, even the senators and members of the House of Representatives are starting to wake up. So Dr. William Bay had a very favourable decision. I was going to read, I'll just read a couple of portions out of Meryl Dorey's wonderful summary. The court found that Billy Bay had been denied procedural fairness, which is the understatement of the century, and that neither AHPRA nor the medical board has considered any of his arguments before removing his license to practice medicine. And that's what William Bay circled, highlighted in his giving of the transcript. He sent my office a copy of the transcript. So the judge said, so the board, the medical board and AHPRA, is happy to proceed on the basis that he is guilty unless he proves he has an exemption. And he said, the applicant, William Bay, said, Your Honour, I put it to my learned friend that there is no basis for the allegation. They denied him procedural fairness. William Bay got a decision in his favour. backdated to the a month in, I think it's July in 2022, backdated 2 years and 2.5 years, and the court ruled that the government would have to pay for the legal costs of both sides. You and I are paying for this rubbish that's going on. Congratulations, William Bay. Now, it's not correct that doctors will now be able to say anything. The squeeze, the vice, the suppression of doctors' voices continues, but at least now APRA will have to do it in a proper way. The TGA, the next point I want to put out about COVID is the TGA has just come out that the TGA knew about the COVID injection contamination. They lied to the people, they lied to politicians, and we will be chasing these bastards. Now, some of the issues we're engaged in, some of the issues One Nation is chasing, the key ones I'll mention: cost of living, immigration, driving up house prices mercilessly, COVID compensation, COVID Royal Commission, energy, making it affordable and reliable, walking back the anti-human policies on mining, agriculture and fishing. These are just the key ones. We've got about 20 or 30 issues that One Nation is chasing federally. Infrastructure, particularly Project Iron Boomerang, which would bring us the lowest cost steel in the world, made right here using our minerals, iron ore, coal and limestone. Our minerals. Opening up the centre of Australia. We've talked about that in the past. Other infrastructure projects I won't go into. Another key one is family. The family has been smashed, torn apart, children dismembered in our country, and this has got to stop. Family law, of course, is the slaughterhouse of the nation. Taxation is another one. How can you raise children when both parents have to work and work long hours because the taxation is so high, and foreign multinationals pay nothing in many cases? They come in here, rape our country for our resources, use our infrastructure, use our people, and then get away with exporting resources for nothing. Productivity increase is essential, because when you get productivity increase, you can then afford non-inflationary wage increases. Free speech and human rights, constitution, legislation, end of mandates, end of censorship. This is in One Nation's policy. Health, education, there are many, I'm just looking at the key ones. Workplace relations. One Nation for 5 years, 5.5 years now, has been chasing Australia's largest wage theft case. We badly need industrial relations reform so that instead of union bosses, multinational companies, consultants, parasites, human resources practitioners, instead of them benefiting from industrial relations complexity and inefficiency, we want the workers to be protected. Workers have been stripped of their protection. Fair Work Commission, some of the largest unions in the country, multinational companies coming in and exploiting people, paying them less than award under union-sanctioned enterprise agreements. Got to stop. Industrial relations, we need badly industrial relations reform. We need to restore our sovereignty away from pushing globalist policies. And by the way, I rarely get the chance to watch videos because priorities just don't allow it. But a friend of mine, he's become a friend as a result of his work on helping us with COVID. He's a pilot who was stood down because he would not comply with the injection mandates. He's a courageous man. Alan lives in North Queensland. He sent me a podcast, link to a podcast of Joe Rogan having a chat with Mike Benz. And Mike Benz used to be in the PSYOPs, the censorship regime in America. America is highly censored, and the censorship bills that we see here, the whole suite, the misinformation, disinformation bill, the digital identity bill, they're all coming from the globalists, but the globalists are taking it from the American institutes, the DARPA, State Department, and CIA, and various others. Watch Joe Rogan having a chat with Mike Benz on the Rogan Experience. Wonderful, 2 hours and 43 minutes. I listen to it in the car coming in. I don't watch it, so don't get off the roads if you're in Brisbane. I listen to it, and it is just stunning. Also, we need to restore our governance in this country to comply with the Constitution. Database policies. Instead of avoiding data, we need to use data. Okay, let's turn it over to Q&A. That's taken me 25 minutes, less than 25 minutes. Okay, over to Q&A. Let's answer some questions. Cynthia, we need to keep our resources for Australia, including iron ore, and process it here with our cheap energy resources. I'll see if I can find some costs. You are absolutely right. I'll see if I can find some prices on aluminium products, because we currently export bauxite. Listen to this. This is from Craig Isherwood's Citizens Electoral Council conference in March of 2015. The Australian precedents for a Hamiltonian credit system. Just plug that into Google. On page 15, he says, a paper presented to Cabinet calculated the value difference, the value added, in exporting aluminium ore, which is bauxite, basically dirt, versus processed aluminium and I've converted it to $2022. Exporting 1 million tonnes of bauxite, the raw material, would earn $65 million in 2022. Sounds like a lot of money. Wait until you get the rest of the figures. Processed just one step further into alumina, a white powder, it would earn $355 million, 5.5 times. Processed again into aluminium would earn $1.6 billion, 25 times the price of dirt, 25 times the price of bauxite. And we do process it into aluminium in Gladstone, Tomago, I think in Geelong, and also Western Australia, I think also in Tassie. But we could do far, far more. But listen to this. Processed into aluminium products would earn $7.8 billion 120 times. So just exporting the dirt, $65 million. Processing it into aluminium products, metal products, $7.8 billion 122 times. So that is stunning. You're absolutely right. Yes, it would earn even heaps more. It would save us some of our imports as well. Andrew McClymont. Everyone that has a smart meter that I know have said they are paying double the normal price as the meter runs on constant peak. Correct. That's what we did, Andrew. We explained that at the start. That's been a change that's come in sneakily. You've got to remember, John Howard introduced the national electricity market. It's not a market, it's a racket. We used to have a market when the states competed with each other in a market for electricity, the cheapest price, the most reliable. That was deliberate responsibility and accountability. And now we've got a racket that's controlled by bureaucrats, and they favour whatever they want to favour. Literally that, they want to favour wind and solar, they put wind and solar in. We have got coal-fired power stations running at below capacity when normally they would run at 95, 98% capacity factor. So it's bloody ridiculous. We're giving priority to solar and wind because the legislation says we must. None of these are figured into the gen cost. We're destroying our electricity sector, and the electricity sector is the most important energy. Whichever country has the cheapest energy has an enormous competitive advantage. We had, when I was a boy, aluminium smelters coming into Kurri Kurri in the Hunter Valley. I used to cycle past it on my way to Kurri Kurri High School, in first year high school. That's gone. It's shut. Now Tomago is being shut down. Today we hear from on the media because there's not enough electricity being generated in New South Wales, partly because coal-fired power stations are broken down because they don't have enough money to do the bloody maintenance. They've been so crippled. Coal-fired electricity is about half, even less, 40% of the cost of the cheapest solar and wind when you factor everything in properly. So we are more than doubling, sometimes doubling and a half the cost of our electricity and making it dependent on weather. We spent hundreds of years getting away from weather dependency, and now we're at the mercy of nature again. Just bloody ridiculous. There we are, Andrew. Hundreds of thousands of Australian households are being charged electricity prices based on their single biggest point of usage across an entire month. Fueling claims power firms are using sneaky tactics to gouge consumers. They can get away with it because the rules are made by the bureaucrats, not by the markets. Just talked about that. Any more questions? Kevin, music to my ears. Why couldn't we construct more dams running hydroelectricity? Exactly. We've been pushing for Tully Millstream Falls electricity generation. There's a hydro tunnel, a dam and a hydro tunnel already built. The tunnel has been sealed up and they use it for storing equipment. It could be generating electricity. It could be generating electricity almost all the year because of the water we have up in North Queensland. Then there's Hells Gate. That can be a hydro. This is all part of the Bradfield scheme that One Nation is pushing components of. Hells Gate Dam, Tully Millstream Falls. I mean, it's insane. Wherever we've got water, we should be using it for electricity, hydroelectricity, and it can be even cheaper than coal. Now, hydroelectricity is also stable. Synchronous power comes from hydro. Synchronous power comes from coal. Synchronous power comes from gas. Synchronous power comes from oil. Synchronous power comes from nuclear. All five. Solar and wind, asynchronous. They need elaborate stability management, which costs money. They need elaborate backups, billions of dollars in backup batteries. And they still can only give capacity for a short time. And then the batteries have to be discharged so they can fill up when solar and wind are producing excess electricity during the day. So if you have if you have your batteries discharged in the morning and you have cloud cover and no wind, then you're in a drought, an energy drought with no bloody backup. And you might not be able to use your Tesla battery in your car, the Tesla wall batteries, because of that. And you might not be able to use your car. Think about this. The cost is shooting through the roof of electricity, hidden by the Energy Relief Fund that taxpayers are paying for. But nonetheless, the prices are going up. When the fund ends, you'll be seeing huge power bills. And then, as well as that, we're decreasing the generation of electricity because wind and solar are not reliable. And we're increasing the demand by putting cars onto the grid, and by putting electrification onto the grid. So we're adding to the demand, and we're bringing in record numbers of immigrants, which will add further to the demand. This is absolutely insane, and it's all coming from Canberra. Trust, choice, accountability. Trust is shot. Choice is restricted because you're paying more for power prices, and you will be paying a hell of a lot more. We'll all be paying a hell of a lot more. And accountability, shot because there's no free market. There's no competition between states. It's now a bureaucratic racket that's controlling your energy price. You're paying for bureaucrats' stuff-ups. So we should be constructing more dams, running hydroelectricity. Why are we not burning coal? The technology is there to burn it clean. Well, we're exporting the bloody stuff. The Chinese are producing 9 times what we produce in coal, and they're wanting even more. We produce about 560 million tonnes a year, export most of it, and now they're making it so that we won't be able to use any of it in this country. The Chinese produce 4.5 billion tonnes. We produce 550 million. They produce 450. We produce 550 million. They produce 4.5 billion tonnes of coal a year, and they're heading for 5. They want more. They're producing most of the world's coal already. India is going up to 1.2 billion tonnes a year, and they want more. They want more of our coal. The technology is there to burn it clean, of course. And carbon dioxide is not dirty. The infrastructure is already there for consumers. You're saying, Cherie, these renewable atrocities, that's a good one. Atrocities are destroying our environment. Correct, they're destroying the environment. Well, why not kill the environment to protect the planet? That's what we're doing. Kill the environment to protect the planet. They're destroying farming. They're destroying native animal habitats. They're cutting down trees that capture carbon and produce oxygen. Exactly. If carbon dioxide was a problem, and it's not a problem. The human production of carbon dioxide is trivial compared to nature. The human production of carbon dioxide, if we stopped producing all carbon dioxide overnight, we would not affect the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's controlled entirely by nature. I've discussed that in the past. I'll discuss it again in the future. But it's just absurd what they're doing. They're completely going against the facts. Lenny, I gave a homeless man $10 today. That man should not be bloody homeless. Immigrants are making more and more people homeless. Inflation goes up, rent and house loans go up, but not wages. Exactly. And that's the other thing I forgot to mention with high immigration. It suppresses wages. A lot of our university students from overseas are coming here as Ponzi workers schemes. They're earning part-time wages. They're sending the money home overseas. So we don't earn exports don't earn as much exports from education as the ABS tell us, because the money is sent home for their families. They're brought here in a Ponzi immigration scheme. They fill our aged care facilities. They fill our other service industries. It's just insane. It drives the price of wages down, and it's just completely unfair. Every Australian here, every foreigner who's here on a resident visa needs a house and needs a roof and a bed, and they're taking 2.9 billion beds off Australians. 2.9 million people here. That's more than 10%. Thank you, DML. We're not blaming immigrants at all. I'm half immigrant, but immigration policy and the people who enacted that policy. Exactly. We are not opposed to immigration. We want to pause in immigration now until we catch up with housing, till every Australian has a bed and a roof over their head, and infrastructure catches up. We're not blaming immigrants. We're saying pause it now because we've got far too many here. We need to ship some of the residents, some of the people here on resident working visas home. We need to ship some of the students here on Ponzi schemes home. And what's happening is the universities are dependent on foreign students, dependent on the cash because they haven't been able to manage their universities properly. We're increasing demand in China too for their manufacturing and our renewable equipment. Yeah, I'm glad you put renewable in inverted commas. Well, this is what's happened. There's a valley up northwest of Brisbane, Brisbane Valley, and near Kilcoy. They want to take over. Chinese want to take over kilometres of a mountain range and a productive, agriculturally productive valley that gets flooded, and it's in a hailstorm area. Smash the solar panels in 20 minutes, in 5 minutes. What they want, the Chinese want to buy it and operate it, subsidised by our electricity prices. Then when the hail smashes them and the lead and other toxins, cadmium and other toxins go into the creek, near a creek it's called, check it out for yourself, goes into the Brisbane River and into Wivenhoe Dam, supplying water to 2.5 million people in southeast Queensland, filled with chemicals, if it goes ahead. And the Chinese are using our coal and their own coal to produce solar panels. Then we subsidise them to bring them over. We subsidise them to install them. We subsidise them to run them, operate them. They get fat on subsidies that we have to pay for, which drives up the price of our electricity. Our manufacturers then can't compete with China, so they set up shop in China. Bloody stupid. We're polluting our water supply, potentially. We're driving up the price of electricity. We're exporting our jobs and our manufacturing overseas, and we're putting more people on the dole. Crazy. The Chinese, smart people. James Thompson asked, will you be putting Rennick as your number 2 candidate in the next election? We need all the voices we can get. We'll be putting Jared number 2 on our preferences, our recommendations. They're not our preferences, they're your preferences. We will be putting on our suggested how to vote card, we'll be putting One Nation 1, of course, and Jared will be number 2, and then the other Freedom Parties 3, 4, 5. That's what we're thinking at the moment. And China uses clean burning coal, only produces water vapour. That's from Trooper. Trooper, you are correct. Kogan Creek here, if you go to Kogan Creek, you'll see nothing visible coming out of the chimney. It's a power station, by the way, right up against the New South Wales border. It was put there so we can send coal, so we can send cheap electricity to New South Wales. Kogan Creek doesn't even need much water for cooling because it's air cooled. But Kogan Creek is a modern power station. Like most of the coal-fired power stations in the country, they're modern. When you burn hydrocarbon fuels, the hydrogen mixes with in the hydrocarbon fuels mixes with the oxygen, forms H2O, water vapour. So it's invisible, except on a cold day when you see it as steam coming out of the power stack. The other thing coming out of the power stack you'll never see because it's invisible all the time, and that's carbon dioxide. The carbon in the hydrocarbon fuels mixes with the oxygen, which forms carbon dioxide. So you get H2O water, vapour, and you get CO2, carbon dioxide, coming out of the chimney. The rest, the real pollutants, carbon dioxide is not a pollutant, it's essential for all life on the planet. Essential for all life on the planet, and we cannot affect the level. And it doesn't drive temperature. Temperature drives the level of carbon dioxide because that's how the oceans operate. The oceans themselves contain 50 to 70 times more carbon dioxide in dissolved form than all the carbon dioxide in the entire atmosphere. And nature produces every year 32 times more carbon dioxide than all of human production, industrial and our exhaled air. So what happens with hydrocarbons is the real pollutants, mixtures of sulfur and nitrous compounds and particulates that used to go up chimneys 40 years ago, but they don't anymore because there are scrubbers in the power station that take them out. They remove them. So what you're seeing is basically pure air, pure carbon dioxide, and pure water vapor going up chimney stacks. Very little in the way of real pollutants coming out of a coal-fired power station. Absolute bullshit. Here we go. Thank you. One of our staff team put this up. Countries and territories with the largest number of operational coal power plants worldwide as of July 2024. Wait until you get down to Australia. Mainland China, that is, 1,161. India, 285. And both of those are growing dramatically. United States, 204. And the United States will be increasing. Indonesia will be increasing. They are the largest exporters of coal now in Indonesia. Japan's still got almost 90. Russia's got 65 and growing. And Japan is starting to build new coal-fired power stations. Germany's knocking down wind turbines to expand surface coal mines. Poland, which is a major producer of coal, is 41. Turkey, 34. Where's Australia? Philippines, 27. South Korea, 25. Vietnam, 25. Czech Republic, 24. Kazakhstan, 22. Ukraine, 19. Oh, there we are, 18. And plan to go to 0 for no bloody reason. How many of them are there? Can you go down that list? China? How many in the list? There's Taiwan. Taiwan's got the same number as we have. They have the same population, but they've got nuclear as well. So it's just stunning. We are the world's second largest exporters of coal. Indonesia has passed us. They're now number 1 exporters. We are number 2, and yet we don't burn anywhere nearly as much. We don't generate anywhere nearly as much electricity as Indonesia does from coal. Look at China, 1,161, was it? Crazy. I haven't voted the past 2 elections. Hopefully others follow. That's an interesting thing. I made some notes here on preferences, which I'd get to if there's time. There is time. Let's address it now. Many people don't know about preferences and ask questions. They want our help. It's the key to election success. So what's preferential voting? Preferential voting is where you say, number 1 preference, I want, in your case, one nation. So in my case, one nation. Number 2, I might put Family First. Number 3, I might put Katter's Australia Party. Number 4, I might put United Australia Party, if they run. Number 5, I might put Libertarians, for example. The minor parties, the true conservative parties, conservative values. And then, if I really don't want Labor, and I don't, then I'll put Liberals next. Then I'll put Labor. Then I'll put the Greens last. Now that's in a straight Senate and House of Reps. So if you're terrified of Labor, what you do is you put LNP down the list but ahead of Labor. That way, if One Nation doesn't get in, and your preference will then go to number 2, which I said was Family First, then to Katter's, and if Katter's gets up, great. If Katter's don't get up, then we go next to United Australia. If they get up, great. If they don't get up with the preferences of the other minor parties, then it go to Libertarians. And if they get up, great. If they don't get up and none of the minor parties get up, you get LNP ahead of Labor. So there are a number of people who don't understand preferences. They came out of the state election and said to so many people right across our state, I voted for you guys. I gave you number 2. We put Liberals number 1 because we just cannot afford to have another 4 years of Labor in this state. I agree with you. We can't afford to have Labor. But if you put Liberal 4th and Labor 5th, your vote goes to LNP if the One Nation parties and the other minor parties don't get up. So the way to vote Conservative is number 1, One Nation. We are the only true Conservative party. And number 2, Liberal. So vote One Nation 1, UAP, Katter's, Family First, etc. 2, 3, 4, 5. Liberal before Labor. So you need to remember 3 things. One Nation 1, Liberal above Labor, Liberal before Labor, and then Greens last. One Nation one, LNP before Labor, and then Greens last. That way, your vote will never get to Labor because the Liberals will get it, but it could go to One Nation. We could get more One Nation people into Parliament. It's that simple. It's really simple. Len Lampkin, you look at that grin on your face, that evil look on your smirk. Yeah, it's beautiful. $600 million for an overseas rugby team. Mate, you know how they're palming it off? They're saying we've got to get in there and influence Papua New Guineans to stop them going to China, falling for China's money. Right. Okay. If you believe that, I can sell you a bridge in Sydney, Harbour Bridge. Mate, this is just stupid. Why don't we just do a good job of making a good neighbour and making it possible to invest in Papua New Guinea, and then that'll take care of the Chinese, and it'll make sure we get a good return on their money. Cunning linguistics. What is wrong with refits of old mothballed coal-fired power stations with small nuclear facilities? Money. That's what's wrong with it. The cheapest form of electricity is hydro, where you can do it. Where you can't do it, coal is the cheapest. Coal is the cheapest. Way ahead of nuclear. Way ahead of nuclear. You saw the gen cost figures and the adjusted gen cost figures. Way ahead of nuclear. And then after nuclear comes solar and wind, a long way behind. Way more expensive than nuclear. Way more expensive than nuclear. But the thing is, you do not need to go to Tarong, rip out the guts of that power station, remove the coal-fired boilers, and install nuclear, because coal is already there. What we need to do is build another coal-fired power station right next to the existing power station, tap into the same coal seam, and get the coal out and generate cheaper electricity. The other thing, we're pleased that nuclear is on the table now. But why the hell did the Liberals say we need to go to nuclear to comply with net zero? They're reinforcing the globalist bullshit. They're reinforcing the Labor Party's lies, the Greens' lies, that coal needs to be stopped. They're throwing coal miners' jobs under the bus, and they're guaranteeing more expensive electricity, cheaper most likely than solar and wind, but way more expensive than coal. Way more expensive. We're doing it. So what's wrong with that? Well, we don't need to do it. That's what's wrong with it. Cunning linguistics. We don't need to do it. If you want to do it, then by all means, nuclear refit better than solar and wind. Our ocean, 200 kilometres out, takes up more than we output. Correct. Our continent of Australia, with our small population, 27 million, rapidly growing, unfortunately, we need to pause that, but our continent already takes up more carbon dioxide, absorbs more carbon dioxide, even without the ocean, than we produce the human production of carbon dioxide. Already. We are net zero. We're net negative carbon dioxide. We are net negative. It is all rubbish that they're telling us. It's just purely for two benefits for the globalists: control over us and wealth transfer. Look at the parasitic behaviours of billionaires who are getting subsidies for hydrogen plants. Oh, and Twiggy's given up. It's no longer profitable. We could have told him that. In fact, I did tell him that in the Senate many times. But he was getting subsidies for doing that. Now he's thrown the towel in. But Simon Holmes Accord is getting subsidies for solar and wind. And they don't talk about the conflicts of interest. The Teals are funded by Climate 200. And one of the largest donors to the Climate 200 is Simon Holmes Accord, who's making subsidies making money, millions of dollars out of subsidies for solar and wind. And the Teals push that case. But the Teals never declare their conflicts of interest. Never. The Greens, similarly, never declare their conflicts of interest. It's just so dishonest. But you're correct, Dale. We could get those figures. I don't know off the top of my head because it depends how you classify it, but a lot of our farmland is foreign owned. A lot of our land, not just China, but the United States. Our ports, at least two of our ports are foreign owned. By foreign leased, not owned, they say. They're leased. Well, they've got control of the damn things. Some of part of our electricity networks in our major capital cities are foreign owned. Why would you sell our electricity interest to foreign owned people, including China? Communist Party control us. The Chinese government, the communist government, is supposed to be the terrible government, and it isn't good on human rights, that's for sure, on freedoms. Why would you sell them our assets? Why would you lease our assets to them? This is insane. This is what's going on. So I don't know the exact details. We must and should be a self-sufficient country. We were in the 1940s and 1950s. We used to make aircraft. We used to make cars. We used to make military vehicles. We used to make our own ammunition. I think there's a little bit of ammunition made around Lithgow in the small arms factory. I think, I'm not sure. I hear conflicting signals. I'm pretty sure that we make some of our munitions there. But we used to export seafood in tins and tin seafood with canneries in Sydney. We used to make our own tools, metalworking tools, lathes. We don't anymore. We don't have people so much these days that can work these machines. We have become dependent. And why did we become dependent? Because the United Nations told us a bunch of lies that our dopey, ignorant, lazy, incompetent, dishonest politicians in Canberra fell for. We need to be interdependent, they say. So you depend on us and we depend upon you. So what that means is that we start depending upon other countries for many of our things. Nowadays, we're killing our manufacturing sector. We're killing agriculture with our absurd electricity prices. A friend bought an entire lounge room rug from Temu for $50. We could be doing the same. We could be doing the same, buying it from Australia if we got back to the cheapest coal-fired power in the world. We had the cheapest power. Aluminium smelters came from other countries to Australia, to the Hunter Valley, to Queensland to build aluminium smelters. We were making value-added aluminium. We could be making it now into metal products and getting 128 times the value that we get for shipping our red bauxite overseas. Well, there's no reason. The Chinese are incredibly smart people. They're productive people. They're hard workers. So are Australians. Australians are more creative, more imaginative, have more initiative than most countries on earth. We've proven that time and time again. 120 years ago, we had the highest standard of living in the world. We had the highest income per capita in the world. The highest. We were number one. And bit by bit, the globalists have white-handed our constitution. Or no, they haven't. The politicians who are controlled by globalists have white-handed our constitution. We have destroyed our country. But it's there. We are the, per capita, we have the world's most resources in the world. We've got water, we've got soil, we've got a climate that is bountiful. And it's not changing, it just varies naturally, as it always has and always will. We can do that. One more question. I don't know exactly, but it only takes a few years, literally a few years. These things are so well done now. It only takes a few years. And the coal is readily accessible right around Australia, close to the major capital cities. Melbourne's got abundant brown coal, not as energy efficient as black coal, but it's all around Melbourne. They don't need to shut down. They can. The other thing we've got is lots of shale oil. We can become self-sufficient in oil. We were producing oil from shale at Glen Davis in the Second World War. In the Second World War. We don't do that anymore. We have got some of the world's largest oil shale reserves in the world. Cooper Pedy, I'm told by a reliable friend, has billions of tons of oil locked up in the oil shale. We are the second, maybe third biggest producer now of liquid natural gas. Pauline suggested it, and I've backed her up. We can build pipelines across the country from the Northwest Shelf to the major capital cities and make our own liquid fuels, diesel and petrol. We can do that from our gas on the Northwest Shelf. Charlie Paul says, we are not building any more coal-fired power stations, and our old faulty coal-fired power stations are all being decommissioned by 2040. What's faulty about them? There's nothing faulty about them. They're old technology, but they're still modern technology in the sense that they don't produce pollutants. They're scrubbed out. Kogan Creek is a fine example. It's not a faulty coal-fired power station. They mightn't be high efficiency, low emissions heli, but they're still very efficient coal-fired power stations, and they produce our electricity cheaply. We had the world's cheapest electricity, the most reliable electricity, the most accessible and stable electricity in the world. It has not been destroyed by climate. It has not been destroyed by any natural disasters, not been destroyed by physics. It's been destroyed by bureaucrats in Canberra, starting with John Howard. In the national electricity market, the renewable energy target, and the compliance with the Kyoto Protocol that he said he wouldn't sign, but he will comply with. He started the rot. And every major climate and energy policy has been introduced by the Liberals. Every one of them. Every major climate and energy policy has been introduced by the Liberals. Labor comes in and ramps them up, turbocharges them. Liberals come in and introduce the next suite of policies. Look at our censorship policies. Australians are creative, very gregarious, social. They're trying to limit our freedom of speech, which is all about creativity, sharing ideas. Humans come up with wonderful ideas, but the thing that gives us even more beauty and power is the fact that we can share our ideas and build on each other's ideas. That's how humans have survived. We're pretty puny animals. Physically, we get torn up by tigers, but because of our creativity and our language and our ability to share, we can organize and build on each other. That's what the United Nations is trying to destroy. That's what the Liberal Party is trying to destroy. That's what the Labor Party is trying to destroy. Two cheeks of the same arsehole, pushing UN and World Economic Forum policies. I didn't elect them. I've never voted for them. I've never voted for anybody who says that they're pushing policies from World Economic Forum and the United Nations, simply because they've never told us. But it goes back to 1975 with the Lima Declaration, in which we agreed to gut our manufacturing and send it to China and other Asian countries. And it goes back to 1944 with the creation of the United Nations. That's where this rot has come from. All of the woke policies, United Nations, World Economic Forum. All of the deindustrialization, United Nations, World Economic Forum. The fabricator of climate change, the man who created this bullshit, told lies doing so, fabricated, concocted the whole thing, was Maurice Strong. He said he had two aims. He was a very senior player in the United Nations, very clever, very, very intelligent man, a very creative liar. And he created the fabrication of global warming, which then he turned into climate change, so that any slight change in variation, natural variation, he could blame on climate, blame it on humans. He said he had two aims in life. One was to put in place an unelected socialist global governance. I mean, that's what essentially we've got, unelected socialist global governance with the United Nations and the World Economic Forum calling the shots through our dopey bastards in Canberra. And the second aim he had was to deindustrialize Western civilization. How inhuman can you get? Look around you. Look around. Look at behind me. Everything was made by steel implement. Everything. The wood in these flagpoles, was harvested with steel saws, struck to a sawmill with steel trucks, cut with steel saw blades in a timber, transported as finished product, shaped by machines into a bar. And it's just insane. The cloth, harvested with steel, planted with steel. That's why I've got up here, I love coal. Got our first child next to it. I love our first child. Love our second child. We also love coal. That's why, because coal liberated humanity. And the Asians, the Africans, they want the same thing that gave us Western civilization. They want cheap coal to make cheap electricity. And they can have it, but so can we. We're not just turning into exporters, quarry, and import solar and wind facilities from China and subsidise them to do so, and can't burn coal in our place. This is bloody stupid. We are wrecking our country. So that's why it's very, very important to vote One Nation. We're the only ones that'll say pull out of the Paris Agreement. We're the only ones that'll say end net zero. The only ones. National Party, Liberal Party signed up. So it's time to go. I want to thank my Senate office team. You guys are just stunning. You have done so much work for me and with me. I love working with you guys. You've done a marvellous job. You've put us at the forefront of so many initiatives in this country. We have started so many things in this country: wage theft, solving wage theft, climate issues, exposing the lack of data, the COVID mismanagement. We have led the way in so many things, and it's because of your hard work. Thank you. And I want to thank all people who've been viewing live streams, but not only people who have been able to view live streams and engage with our office, but thank you for working with me. Whether you pull me up somewhere, give me a suggestion. Thank you for holding me accountable. Yeah, we might even talk about chemtrails in the new year. But no one's asked chemtrails that I can see. But anyway, there you go. We get a few emails on that. But I'm happy to talk about things. I'm happy for people to hold me up accountable, hold me accountable. And thank you to everyone who's expressed appreciation for the work we do. Look, it really is a privilege. I mean that sincerely. It's a privilege and a huge responsibility to serve the people of Queensland and Australia. But I feel very, very proud of doing so. I'm humbled by the fact that I have this opportunity to serve you. From Christine, from our Senate team, everyone in the office here, and from me to you and to yours, a very happy, safe Christmas and happy, safe and successful New Year. We'll look forward to working with you in the New Year. Have a good break.